This is Sophia with over 15 years of experience farming in Kenya, and I therefore have few nuggets for those who are planning of going to cash crop farming in Kenya. And here we go. The first consideration you have to make is the type of crop you're going to plant. Why? Because you need to understand if the seeds are available in Kenya or where you will get those seeds and at what cost for planning purposes. You need also to understand the pests and diseases of this crop, and in case this occurs, where do you get the pesticides and fungicides and all that. You also need to understand the water conditions or water requirements of that crop for planning purposes, as well as the other nutritional needs, the fertilizers, and at what stage do you need what fertilizer. You also need to understand its harvesting, handling, and also even the storage conditions that this crop will require for also planning purposes. And you also need to understand how long this crop takes to maturity or to the fruition, so that you can also plant that and take care of it until that time. And it will also enable you to understand the various stages or phases of the crop growth and its nutritional needs at each phase of this crop. You need to look into any advancement in research in regard to the crop, if there are better breeds out there with the diseases and pest resistant varieties, so that you may weigh your options on which is the best variety to go for in matters to this crop. And also you need to look at the farming practices that are unique to this crop. Does it require propping at a certain state? Does it require shading? Does it require pruning and all that? You also need to look at labor considerations. Do you have the expert labor requirements or availability within the area that you want to grow this crop? And other conditions is the legal requirements. There are any legality or government policies or conditions that you need to meet to grow this crop. Now, second one is the land size. You need to look into the land that will grow this crop. Where is the land? What is its elevation? Again, thinking of the crop that you're growing. Certain crops will require certain altitudes, certain land elevations, certain types of soil and all that. So you need to think about that. And also land size will also come in handy depending on the scale of farming or even how effective or efficient your farming methods are. Also, whether you're thinking of going either open field or you will use greenhouse to grow the crop. As we said, the crop type will also determine the soil type. And when it comes to soil type, you're looking at drainage of the soil, water retention, its fertility and nutritional needs, and the crop type is, again, we had said from up there. Fourth, you need to look at your sources of water. Are you going to use irrigation or are you going to use rely on rain? If it is irrigation, are you using a borehole or are you getting pipe water from someone, or are you using the rivers or are you using the dams? Are your methods of irrigation efficient? Are you thinking of climate change and conservation of water on your methods of irrigation and so on? Fifth is labor. It is very tricky in Kenya when it comes to labor and hiring of farmhand. So this is a very vital and very important consideration. You have to consider whether is your crop labor intensive, and is that labor available in your area? What is the cost of the labor in the area that you're farming? How reliable is it? Is your crop safe? Do you have petty thieves and do you have all that? Are they able to follow the rotas, if it is irrigation rotas, harvesting rotas? Are they learned enough to understand pesticide controls and application of chemicals? Are they able to keep records, simple farming records and all that? And also the availability of experts, and examples is agronomists and also government agricultural officers who can also provide expert opinion in terms of farming. So you need to understand, are they available in your area, and understanding your crop, at what level you need them to be involved, will they be available to you? So that is very important. The issue of labor, as I said, is very important. And we move to the next point, that is market. Before you plant anything, you need to have a market for that product. So before you start planting, don't plant then you say, I'm going to look for market. First, you look for the market. When you're very sure you understand the market is when you plant. What do you understand about the market? The seasonal fluctuations of demand and supply in the market. For example, if you're going to onion farming, then you need to understand the fluctuations in market of demand and supply. You want to plant when there is demand in the market. And sometimes we have some months, for example, from September to November, where we are importing a lot of onions from Tanzania, and therefore prices are low in the markets, and many Kenyans opt not to have onions. You need to understand these trends and when they happen, so that you are able to act accordingly and plant with wisdom. You also need to know, if in the market, how easy is it to access that market, and how fast, if, for example, it is a perishable product, how fast do you get to the market? So you need to understand that before you plant. You need to also understand, make these decisions dependent on whether you're planting for the local market again or export markets. If it is export market, then there are other considerations that you also need to follow up. For example, they have the GAP certifications, that is Global Acceptable Standards of farming, that you need to follow through and get the certifications and so on. So you make your decision also in consideration of whether you're planting the local market or the export market. There are standards of all for all of them, and it is important to keep that in mind. Another one is accessibility of market from the farm. Always ensure that you're accessible to the market, and you can easily take your products on your own to the market. Accessibility in the market sometimes works on the negative for those people doing mobile farming. Why? Because some of the farm help choose to take advantage of the accessibility of the market and then offload your product with or without your knowledge. So that is also a consideration. You have to be very careful when taking that. Another one is the capital and implementation budget. Remember, once you plant, these crops will take for their whole maturity duration before you can sell them. You have to be able to meet all the needs that this crop will require before you are able to take it to the market. So please look at your financial options. Ensure that you are able to finance that product, take care of its pests and diseases, and buy all the chemicals, follow the rotas for its nutritional needs when they are required, and any labor considerations there in the middle, and all that will require money. You also have to plan to ensure you have enough labor. Ensure that, for example, if you're using irrigation and you're using generators, you have enough money for fuel before you can even plant the crop, because you do not want your crop in the middle of it getting stranded, or you're losing the crop because you were not able to meet some of the financial obligations that it requires for it to reach to maturity and fruition. You can also use to plant using contracts. There are companies out there that will contract you to plant certain crops. That is a better option, because now then some of the needs and some of the materials required for taking care of that crop to maturity, they will provide, and then they will assist you in the marketing of the product, and then they can then scoop off their expenses that they have used on the crop. Also, planting on contracts is very good because now you're assured of market, and so therefore that is also a very good option. There are also institutions that support research, and therefore they are able to support you so that you may be able to plant those crops, and for their to support their research operations. Alternative, they also have institutions that will assist you in meeting some of the capital and budgetary needs, so that they can see that your, for example, your issues to do with their food security and improving such issues. There are NGOs out there that are supporting farmers to ensure that they meet their obligations in their farms regarding to food securities and the like. Also, it is very important to note that from point 1 to point 6, they all require money. Therefore, beforehand, you need to plan for type of crop, ensuring that you're meeting all its needs, its water and nutrition needs, and the budget of it. Its pest and control and diseases control, you have a budget for it. Land, remember that in case you don't, you've not inherited land, then it is either hired or you buy, and that also requires some capital to it. Also, remember sources of water, your day in, day out usage of water. If you require, maybe for example, it's a borehole, you need some pumping mechanism, and that is also requires money. If the initial setting of the borehole also requires money. Labor is a continuous budget or expense, and therefore you need to be able to make that throughout your crop growth. And market becomes very tricky. Some farmers will plant, and then while their crop is about to mature is when they're wondering, where do they start with the market? You have to plan early enough. You have to ensure you've invested enough to get the right market, and therefore you also have to have thought about the capital and budgetary requirements to ensure you have a good market for your crop. Okay, that is it. More questions, kindly let me know. Take advantage of my 15 years in experience in farming, and let me know what you think about farming in Kenya.